Jai-Ho Park stared at his computer screen in disbelief. The email said he had won the auction for just $50. His hand shook as he read it again. The ancient metal sphere in the pictures looked worth thousands, maybe even millions. This has to be fake, he said to himself in his small office at the Seoul Institute of Technology. The air conditioning hummed quietly as he leaned back in his chair. His phone rang. It was his best friend, Do-hyun Kim, calling from the lab next door. Jai-Ho, did you really buy that artifact? Are you crazy? Do-hyun's voice was full of worry. It's just $50, Jai-Ho said. Even if it's fake, I won't lose much. That's not the point. Nobody sells real artifacts that cheap. It could be dangerous. Remember what happened to Professor Yang last year? He bought a fake artifact, and it exploded in his lab. Jai-Ho looked at the pictures again. The sphere was beautiful, covered in strange marks that looked like stars and waves. He had never seen anything like it in his 8 years of studying ancient technology. I'll be careful, he promised. You worry too much. 3 days later, a small package arrived at his lab. Jai-Ho signed for it, surprised by how light it felt. He closed his office door and carefully opened the box. The sphere sat on a bed of bubble wrap. It was smaller than he expected, about the size of an orange. In the fluorescent light of his office, its silver surface seemed to shimmer with a faint blue glow. Jai-Ho put on his gloves and lifted it out carefully. It was warm to the touch, even through the latex. That was strange. Metal objects usually felt cold. He set it down on his examination table and took some pictures. The markings were even more interesting up close. They reminded him of ancient Korean star maps, but some symbols were completely different. His computer beeped. The initial scan showed something impossible. The sphere was giving off tiny amounts of energy. Do-hyun, Jai-Ho called out. You need to see this. His friend came in, looking worried. What now? Look at these readings. Jai-Ho pointed to his screen. This isn't just metal. There's something inside it, something active. Do-hyun frowned at the numbers. Jai-Ho, this isn't right. No ancient artifact should be producing energy like this. We need to call security. Wait, Jai-Ho said. Just let me run a few more tests. This could be the discovery of the century, or it could be dangerous. Do-hyun moved toward the phone on Jai-Ho's desk. I'm calling security. Just then, the sphere began to hum. A soft blue light pulsed from the markings, filling the room with a gentle glow. See, Jai-Ho said excitedly. It's doing something. Do-hyun grabbed his arm. That's exactly what I'm worried about. We need tow. The sphere floated up from the table, spinning slowly in the air. The humming grew louder, and the blue light became brighter. Both men stared, frozen in place. Years of research had never prepared them for anything like this. Jai-Ho, Do-hyun whispered. What did you just buy? The sphere spun faster, its glow now so bright they had to shield their eyes. The humming reached a pitch that made their teeth vibrate. And then, everything changed. Jai-Ho Park had no idea that his $50 auction win was about to turn his whole world upside down. He didn't know that this mysterious sphere would not only change his life, but also the future of human civilization. He thought he had found an artifact. He was about to find out how wrong he was. The bright blue light filled every corner of Jai-Ho's office. He and Do-hyun covered their eyes as the humming reached its peak. Then suddenly, everything went quiet. When they lowered their hands, both men gasped. Where the sphere had been floating, a woman now stood on Jai-Ho's examination table. Her skin had a slight silvery shimmer, and her long hair seemed to float as if she were underwater. She wore what looked like flowing metal cloth that changed colors with every movement. Greetings, chosen one, she said in perfect Korean. Her voice was musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. I am Era of the Starlight Dynasty. Do-hyun grabbed the phone again, but Jai-Ho stopped him. Wait, he whispered. Just wait. Era stepped down from the table gracefully. She was tall, almost as tall as Jeho. Her eyes were the same blue as the sphere's light, and they seemed to hold infinite knowledge. You, Jeho struggled to find words. You were the sphere. She smiled. That was my travel form. I chose it because your people expect artifacts to be objects, not living beings. Do-hyun found his voice. Why are you here? My civilization has been watching Earth for many years, Era explained. She walked around the office, touching things with curious fingers. We are far more advanced than humans, but we have a problem. Our society has become too perfect, too controlled. We are losing something important. Losing what? Jeho asked. He noticed that her movements were precise, almost too perfect. Creativity, spontaneity, the ability to think in new ways. She picked up a pen from Jeho's desk and studied it. Your species fascinates us. You are chaotic, emotional, unpredictable. And that makes you incredible problem solvers. Do-hyun crossed his arms. So you're saying we're interesting because we're primitive? Era shook her head. No, you are interesting because you are free. In my world, everything is planned. Every marriage, every career, every life path, all decided by computers and councils. She put the pen down carefully. I am a princess of my people, and I refuse to accept that kind of life. Jeho's scientific mind was racing. The auction. You arranged it. Yes, I searched for someone with the right combination of intelligence, curiosity, and kindness. When I found you, Jeho Park, I knew you were the perfect candidate. Candidate for what? Do-hyun asked suspiciously. Era turned to Jeho, her eyes glowing slightly brighter. For partnership. In my civilization, we believe the best way to understand another species is to bond with them. I chose you, Jeho Park, to be my mate. The room went silent. Jeho felt like his brain had stopped working. Do-hyun looked like he might faint. But I'm human, Jeho finally managed to say. Era smiled again. Exactly. That's what makes you perfect. Your DNA, your way of thinking, your emotional capacity. These are exactly what my people need to evolve. This is crazy, Do-hyun muttered. Completely crazy. I understand this is shocking, Era said. I don't expect an immediate answer. But time is limited. My guardian, Hanbyul, will notice I'm missing soon. We have perhaps 1 Earth month before they come looking for me. Jeho sat down heavily in his chair. His $50 auction win had just turned into the most important first contact in human history, and somehow he had also become part of an alien princess's rebellion against her perfect society. What happens now? He asked. Era's expression became serious. Now, Jeho Park, you help me learn about your world. And I help you understand mine. After that, we both have a choice to make. Outside his office window, Seoul's skyline glittered in the afternoon sun. Jeho wondered how many other secrets were hidden in the sky above those buildings, waiting to change everything they thought they knew about the universe. 1 week after Era's arrival, Jeho's small apartment had transformed into a classroom of cultural exchange. Era sat cross-legged on his living room floor, surrounded by books, magazines, and takeout containers. Her silvery skin glowed softly in the morning light. I don't understand, she said, holding up a romance novel. Why do humans spend so much time thinking about love? In my world, partnerships are based on genetic compatibility and social benefit. Jeho sat down across from her with 2 cups of coffee. Love isn't logical, he explained. It's about feelings, about connecting with someone in a special way. Era took a careful sip of coffee. Her eyes widened at the taste, just like they did every morning. Fascinating. You humans choose your drinks based on pleasure rather than optimal nutrition. Do-hyun, who had become their daily visitor, laughed from his spot on the couch. Wait until she tries ice cream. Jeho watched as Era made notes on a tablet she had created from part of her metallic clothing. The device was far more advanced than anything on Earth, but she insisted on learning things the human way. "Your world is so different," she said. "Everything here is unpredictable. People make choices based on emotions. They change their minds. They take risks." She looked up at Jaiho. "In my world, risk is considered a flaw. But without risk, how do you make new discoveries?" Jaiho asked. "We don't. Not really." Era's voice grew sad. "Our technology advanced until we removed all uncertainty from life. Now we just exist. Perfect, but unchanging." Do-hyun leaned forward. "Is that why you came here? To find uncertainty?" Before Era could answer, her tablet began to pulse with red light. Her face turned serious. "Han Byul is searching for me. They've reached your solar system." Jaiho felt his heart race. "How long do we have?" "A few weeks, maybe less." Era's hands moved quickly over her tablet. "They're being careful not to be detected by Earth's satellites, but I can sense their energy signature." "What will they do when they find you?" Do-hyun asked. Era's blue eyes met Jaiho's. "They will try to take me back. In their view, I'm contaminating our genetic line by even considering a partnership with a human." Jaiho remembered how careful and precise Era's movements had been when she first arrived. Now she moved more naturally, showing emotion in her gestures. She had even started using slang words she learned from TV shows. "You're changing," he said softly. She smiled. "Yes, every day I spend here, I become less perfect, less controlled. And I love it." She touched her chest. "I feel things now. Real emotions, not just programmed responses." Do-hyun stood up and started pacing. "This is bigger than just you two. If your people think humans are contaminating their society, they might see Earth as a threat." "No," Era said firmly. "That's why I chose this way. By selecting one specific human, by following our bonding traditions, I'm making it harder for them to interfere. Our laws about personal choice in partnerships are very old and very strong." Jaiho reached out and took her hand. Her skin felt warmer than before, more human. "We'll figure this out," he promised. "Humans are good at solving impossible problems, remember?" Era squeezed his hand, another very human gesture she had learned. Outside, Seoul's morning traffic created its usual chaos of sound and movement. To Jaiho, it no longer seemed noisy. It was the sound of life, of freedom, of countless people making their own choices. He just hoped they would have enough time to prove that sometimes imperfection could be the greatest strength of all. The warning came on a quiet Sunday morning. Era's tablet flashed bright red, filling Jaiho's apartment with pulsing light. Her face turned pale, making her silvery skin look almost white. "They're here," she whispered. "Han Byul has entered Earth's atmosphere." Jaiho rushed to close the curtains. Even though he knew Earth's technology couldn't detect Han Byul's ship, he felt exposed. "What do we do?" Before Era could answer, a tall figure appeared in the middle of the room. The air rippled like water, and there stood Han Byul. They wore armor that looked like liquid metal, and their eyes glowed with a cold white light. "Princess Era," Han Byul said in a voice that sounded like ice breaking. "Your behavior is disappointing." Era stood straight, her chin lifted high. "I have broken no laws, Guardian. I followed all proper protocols for choosing a mate." Han Byul's gaze turned to Jaiho. Their eyes narrowed. "This creature is not an acceptable choice. Humans are unstable, emotional, primitive. Those are exactly the qualities our people need," Era argued. "Look at what we've become, Han Byul. Perfect machines, living perfect, empty lives." Jaiho wanted to step between them, but Do-hyun chose that moment to walk through the front door. He stopped, his mouth open in shock at the scene before him. "Another human," Han Byul said with disgust. "Princess, you've exposed our existence to multiple primitives. This violation cannot stand." Do-hyun found his courage. "We're not primitives," he said firmly. and Era chose to trust us. Han Biol raised their hand, and a small device appeared. I can erase their memories, Princess. Then we can return home and forget this foolishness. No. Era moved to stand in front of Jiho and Do-hyun. You know the laws. I have the right to choose my mate. Jiho won the artifact fairly. He solved the puzzles I set. He showed kindness, intelligence, and creativity. Laws can be changed, Han Biol said coldly. The Council will understand when I explain the threat humans pose. Their chaos could infect our entire society. Jiho found his voice. You're afraid, he said quietly, not of us being primitive, but of us being free. Han Biol turned to him sharply. What did you say? Your perfect society is dying, Jiho continued. Era told us. No new ideas, no changes, no growth. You're not protecting your people. You're trapping them. The Guardian's armor rippled with anger. You dare to judge us. Your species still fights wars. You pollute your planet. You let emotions rule your choices. Yes, Era said. And they also create beautiful art. They take risks to help strangers. They love without calculating genetic benefits. She reached back and took Jiho's hand. They're teaching me to feel alive again. Han Biol's device began to glow. This ends now. For the good of our society, I will remove all trace of our existence from their minds. But before they could act, Era pulled something from her clothing. It was a small crystal that pulsed with rainbow light. Guardian, I invoke the right of challenge. Han Biol froze. The device in their hand flickered and went dark. You wouldn't dare, they whispered. Era's voice was firm. I challenge you to observe. 1 Earth week. Watch us, learn about humans. If you still believe they are a threat, I will return without protest. The Guardian stared at the crystal, then at Ara. Finally, they nodded once. 1 week, Princess. But when you fail, all of them will forget you existed. As Han Biol faded from view, Jiho squeezed Era's hand. They had 7 days to prove that humanity's imperfection was worth saving. 3 days into Han Biol's challenge, Jiho noticed something strange about Era. She seemed to know what he was thinking before he spoke. At first, he thought it was just because they had grown close, but then something happened that changed everything. They were walking in a busy park, trying to show Han Biol the beauty of human interaction. Do-hyun walked a few steps behind them, keeping watch for the invisible Guardian. Suddenly, Era stopped walking. There, she said, pointing to a group of children playing. Watch. A small boy was climbing too high on the jungle gym. Before anyone could see the danger, Era closed her eyes. The boy stopped, looked down, and carefully climbed back to a safer spot. Did you just? Jiho started to ask. Yes, Era said quietly. I sent him a feeling of caution. It's one of our basic abilities. Do-hyun caught up with them. You can control minds. No, not control. We can share feelings, suggest thoughts, but we cannot force anyone to do anything. Era sat down on a nearby bench. It's why your species interests us so much. Your minds are different. You resist outside influence. You think in ways we cannot predict. Jiho sat beside her. Is that why Han Biol thinks we're dangerous? Partly. Era watched the children playing. In my world, everyone's thoughts flow together like a calm river, but human minds are like the ocean, full of waves and deep currents and things we cannot see. And you can read all our thoughts. Do-hyun asked nervously. Era smiled. Only surface thoughts, and only when I try. Most of the time, I keep my abilities closed off. I want to experience life the way you do. Just then, they felt a cold presence. Han Biol appeared on the bench next to them, still invisible to normal humans. You reveal our secrets so easily, the Guardian said. These abilities are what make us superior. No, Era replied firmly. They make us different, not better. Watch. She pointed to two children sharing their toys in the sandbox. No one had told them to do it. No one had suggested it mentally. They simply chose to be kind. That is what we've lost, Era said. The ability to surprise ourselves, to make choices without calculating every outcome. Hanbiol was quiet for a moment. Your mother, the queen, she said something similar before she died. She worried we were becoming too perfect. Jiho saw Era's eyes fill with tears, real tears, something her people rarely showed. I miss her, she whispered. She would have understood why I came here. Suddenly, a ball rolled near their bench. A little girl ran up to get it, then stopped. She looked right at where Hanbiol sat, though the guardian was invisible. Your hair is pretty, the girl said. It looks like starlight. Hanbiol flickered into visibility for just a second, shocked. The girl giggled and ran away with her ball. Impossible, Hanbiol whispered. Our cloaking technology is perfect. No human should be able to see through it. And yet she did, Era said softly. That's what makes humans special. They do impossible things every day, without even trying. Jiho watched as Hanbiol stood up, their perfect posture showing signs of uncertainty for the first time. 4 more days, the guardian said, before vanishing completely. Era leaned against Jiho's shoulder. They're beginning to understand, she said. Perfection isn't everything. Sometimes, the most beautiful things come from imperfection. Above them, clouds moved across the sky in random patterns, creating shapes that no computer could predict. Just like human hearts, Jiho thought, making choices that no perfect being could understand. On the final day of the challenge, Hanbiol appeared in Jiho's apartment before sunrise. The guardian's perfect posture remained, but their eyes had changed. They looked troubled. Princess Era, Hanbiol said formally, the council has made contact. They demand your immediate return. Era sat up straighter on Jiho's couch. What are their terms? Return home to fulfill your royal duties, and we will leave Earth undisturbed. Refuse, and you will face exile. You will never be allowed to return home. Hanbiol's voice softened slightly. Please, princess, think about your people. Jiho felt his heart sink. He had known this moment would come, but he wasn't ready. These past days with Era had changed everything. He thought he knew about life and love. Do-hyun arrived just then, carrying breakfast. He stopped when he saw Hanbiol, but then continued setting out the food. Whatever happens, he said, we should eat first. Humans think better with food in their stomachs. Hanbiol watched with curiosity as they shared a simple meal of rice, soup, and kimchi. The guardian had spent the week observing humans, and Jiho had noticed their interest growing each day. Your people share food often, Hanbiol said, even when it is not efficient. Because it's not about efficiency, Do-hyun explained. It's about connection. Community. Era picked up her spoon with practiced ease, so different from her first awkward attempts at using earth utensils. I've made my decision, she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Jiho felt his hands shake slightly. But before I announce it, she continued, I want Jiho to speak first. Jiho looked at her in surprise. Me? Yes. Era's blue eyes were gentle. Tell me what you think I should do. Jiho took a deep breath. He thought about everything they had shared. Her wonder at simple things like rain and street food. Her joy in learning human customs. The way she had slowly learned to laugh freely. I think, he said slowly, you should go home. Everyone stared at him in shock. Jiho, Do-hyun started to protest, but Jiho held up his hand. Your people need you, Era. They need someone who has seen another way of living. Someone who can show them that perfection isn't everything. He smiled sadly. If you stay here, you'll be happy, maybe. But if you go back, you could change your entire civilization. Hanbiol's eyes widened. You would give her up, even though you love her. Because I love her, Jiho corrected. Love isn't about possession. It's about wanting what's best for the other person. Era stood up suddenly. Her silvery skin glowed brighter than ever. And that, she said triumphantly, is exactly why I choose to stay. What? Jaiho and Hanbiol said together. My people need to learn what Jaiho just demonstrated. True love, selfless choice, the wisdom to see beyond personal desire. She turned to Hanbiol. Tell the council this. I will not return as a perfect princess, but I offer something better, a bridge between our worlds. Hanbiol was silent for a long moment. Finally, they said, the council will not like this. No, Era agreed, but they will be interested, and interest leads to change. Outside, the sun had fully risen, painting Seoul's skyline in shades of gold. Jiho realized that just like the dawn, this wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. 2 days after Era's decision, Hanbiol returned with news from the Starlight Dynasty's council. The Guardian appeared in Jaiho's office at the Research Institute, where Era was helping him organize his work. The council has responded, Hanbiol announced. Their voice was different now, less cold. They are intrigued. Era looked up from the computer where she had been typing. Tell me exactly what they said. They say your suggestion of becoming a bridge between our worlds is unexpected, unpredictable. Hanbiol paused. They find this fascinating. Jaiho shared a smile with Era. The council's reaction proved everything she had been saying about her people's need for surprise and change. There is more, Hanbiol continued. The council wishes to send a small delegation to Earth. They want to study this phenomenon of human unpredictability directly. Do-hyun, who had been quietly working nearby, stood up quickly. We can't just have alien delegates walking around Seoul. People will notice. Actually, Era said thoughtfully, maybe that's exactly what we need. She walked to the window and looked out at the city. Our people have hidden from humans for too long. We've watched from a distance, thinking we were protecting both our societies. But what if openness is better than perfection? Jaiho understood what she meant. You want to make first contact official. Yes, Era turned back to face them, not with everyone at once, but perhaps starting with a small group of scientists and government officials, people who can help manage the introduction of our peoples. Hanbiol looked uncertain. The council may not approve of such a dramatic step. The council sent me to find new ways of thinking. Era reminded them. This is my proposal. We stop hiding. We learn from each other openly. Humans gain access to advanced technology, and our people learn about creativity, emotion, and growth. Jaiho thought about this carefully. We should talk to Professor Yang first. He has connections in the government, and he already knows something strange is happening in this department. I could help, Do-hyun offered. I've been taking notes on everything we've learned about Era's people. I could prepare information packets, help explain things in ways humans will understand. Era smiled at him. Do-hyun, would you consider being Earth's first official ambassador to the Starlight Dynasty? Do-hyun's eyes widened. Me? But I'm just a research assistant. You are much more, Hanbiol said, surprising everyone. You have shown remarkable adaptation to new ideas. You ask intelligent questions. You seek to understand rather than judge. Jaiho watched as his friend tried to process this praise from the once cold Guardian. It showed how much things had changed in just a few days. The council will arrive in 1 Earth week, Hanbiol announced. They will expect a plan for this diplomatic introduction. Era took Jaiho's hand. Then we have work to do. We need to prove that our peoples can be stronger together than apart. That perfection isn't as valuable as growth. Outside the office, the busy sounds of Seoul continued as usual. Soon, Jaiho thought, those streets might see their first official alien visitors. The world was about to change forever, all because of a simple auction and an artifact that turned out to be so much more. The day of the first official meeting between Earth and the Starlight Dynasty arrived on a bright spring morning. The chosen location was a private conference room at Seoul National University, carefully prepared for this historic moment. Professor Yang had helped arrange everything, bringing together a small group of trusted officials and scientists. Jiho stood nervously beside Era, watching as Earth's representatives took their seats around the large table. "Are you ready?" he whispered to her. Era squeezed his hand. Her silvery skin glowed softly in the morning light streaming through the windows. "I've never been more ready for anything." The air in the room shimmered, and 5 members of the Starlight Dynasty's council appeared. They wore flowing robes that seemed to be made of pure light. Han Byul stood with them, looking proud and uncertain at the same time. Do Hyun stepped forward, wearing his new diplomatic uniform. "On behalf of Earth, we welcome the representatives of the Starlight Dynasty," he said clearly, following the words Era had taught him. The head council member, an elegant being named Sol, spoke in perfect Korean. "We come seeking understanding and connection between our peoples." Professor Yang leaned forward. "We have many questions about your civilization." "And we have many questions about yours," Sol replied. "That is why we are here. Princess Era has shown us that there is value in what we once saw as imperfection." Jiho watched as humans and aliens began to talk. The scientists asked about technology. The government officials discussed cultural exchange. Through it all, Era moved between the groups, helping everyone understand each other. "Your princess has changed," Han Byul said quietly to Jiho. "She shows emotion freely now. She laughs. She makes unexpected choices. A month ago, I would have seen this as failure." "And now?" Jiho asked. "Now I see it as growth." Han Byul's perfect posture relaxed slightly. "Perhaps we all need to grow." The meeting continued for hours. Plans were made for future exchanges. The Starlight Dynasty would share some of their technology, focusing on medical advances and environmental protection. In return, humans would teach them about art, music, and the beauty of unpredictability. Near the end of the meeting, Sol stood up. "We have one more announcement," they said. "The Council has created a new position. Ambassador of Innovation. Princess Era, we ask you to take this role." Era's eyes widened. What would this mean? "You would continue your life here on Earth with your chosen partner," Sol explained. "But you would also help guide the exchange between our peoples. You would teach us what you have learned about the value of imperfection." Jiho felt his heart soar. Era could stay with him and still help her people. It was more perfect than anything they had hoped for. "I accept," Era said, her voice full of joy. "And I nominate Do Hyun as my human counterpart in this role." Do Hyun almost dropped his papers in surprise, but then he straightened up and nodded firmly. As the meeting ended and people began to leave, Jiho looked around the room. Humans and aliens were talking together, sharing ideas and making plans, all because he had won a mysterious auction for $50. "What are you thinking?" Era asked him. "I'm thinking that sometimes the best things in life come from unexpected places," he replied. "Like an artifact that turned out to be so much more." Above the university, the spring sky was clear and bright. Somewhere up there, 2 civilizations were beginning to reach toward each other, learning that perfection wasn't as important as connection. And it all started with a simple choice to take a chance on something unknown.